us to be able to fund. We have funded bigger things like our YMCA. They just did a $2.2 million expansion of their facilities and also built 3 soccer complexes, three soccer fields and a soccer complex. The Galesburg Community Foundation was one of the lead gifts there. We've given back to Farm Bureau several times since I've been at the Community Foundation and funded rescue equipment, raised and safety rescue equipment. They purchased GPS units for all of our first responder vehicles in the county to access rural areas quicker. Organizations come to us with what their needs are, and then our grant committee evaluates them based on the resources that we have available as to which ones that we're actually able to fund. We've helped a women's shelter in town. We've bought vehicles. We've put roofs on buildings. It's a pretty diverse amount of things that we've actually been able to fund. But annually, in July, we make our grant cycle open. That's when we open our grant cycle. And then we make awards in the October timeframe for organizations, again, that have charitable designation, have charitable purpose, and are within what we consider our service area. I do know that, I had talked to Jen, and I think that the real reason that she invited me was I said, oh yeah, Elmwood is definitely within what we would consider our granting district. She's pretty smart. But there's also a community foundation in Peoria that I would think would say that they cover Elmwood as well as Central Illinois Community Foundation. So.
Do you have a grant writer who helps folks write grants, or do you teach grant writing?
We do not teach grant writing yet. And we do not have a grant writer on staff. However, that's not a unique idea. We get asked that question a lot because it's something that we've kind of considered just because a lot of organizations have very different purposes, but there's no need for them to necessarily have to hire their own grant writer. If we had one grant writer that could research all the different types of grants, we could be providing a good service for all of our nonprofits. Yes,
Are there any aspects of your training program that for the nonprofits that would work for people who are not nonprofit, that are trying to reestablish business?
I would think so. I've never had to try to reestablish a business, but the people who are going through our course are board members and are these nonprofit leaders. I mean, it's business operations is what they're learning, just specific to nonprofits. So some of it might not be directly applicable to your business, but I think all of it can be translated into business. But it was designed specifically for nonprofit organizations. So again, 990 filings and communications as a way to, well, this would translate over really well. Communications as a way to leverage resource. I think that would probably transfer to the business world very quickly. We do a lot of like succession planning for CEOs, and so many times the executive director of an organization becomes the identity of the organization. Well, what happens when that person just leaves, gets a different job or whatever it might be? How do you plan for things like that? Those are things that our course tries to do.
Let's pretend you were dropped into Elmwood instead of Galesburg. And this is a foundation trying to rebuild a community. What would you have take a second, and would you have any thoughts that you might impart to us that would maybe be helpful?
I was dropped into Elmwood. Well, I would really like being dropped into Elmwood. You have a nice community. That would be a good thing for me. I'm from a small town, so that would be nice. I'm from Roseville. And, yeah. Maybe she should be teaching part of our course. I guess the first thing that I would do if I was dropped into Elmwood and needed to help to rebuild the community is I would want to surround myself with the people who are like-minded. Who else has an interest or has incentives to want to rebuild the community. That's what I guess what I would look for, because the community foundation can be a convener of the people who need to tackle the problems of the community. More neutral than I think maybe even a business interest can do. But I think that a community foundation can bring business to the table, can bring government to the table. That's the way that we're trying to position ourselves in Galesburg, because you know, I'm not from Galesburg. I don't know that Galesburg will ever consider me part of Galesburg, but Galesburg has lots of different little wonderful things happening. We have, we were talking earlier about Seminary Street. We have a wonderful little Seminary Street that's great. And we have a business community who wants to see other business start to grow, maybe selfishly. We have an arts community with like the Orpheum Theater and some of those type of amenities that can attract people to our community. We have, you know, lots of good housing. We have lots of green space. We have, you know, a community foundation that has more endowed wealth per citizen than probably any other county in the state of Illinois. I should rephrase that. More unrestricted endowed wealth than any other county in the state of Illinois. Most community foundations' assets are restricted. So we have all these really great little things going on, but we have no one that's bringing us all together to move us forward. We have no one that's casting a vision for our area. And so, this is a really long answer. I guess I would want to be a part of that vision of the other people who have a vested interest in Elmwood. I would want to bring all those people to the table and help cast that vision and say, okay, here's what this person's role, and by this person, here's what business's role should be, here's what government's role should be, here's what philanthropy's role should be. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
When you assumed the assets in 2004, I guess from what you said, the 19 million you're at right now, where did you start? And where, I know you're at 19 million. So how much?
I think it was like 13 and a half or 14 million in 2004.
So yeah, so you made, so it's been like a $6 million increase in the last 7 years.
Yeah, most of it being natural growth.
Right.
We don't particularly have most community foundations. I said earlier that community foundations are you've seen one. A lot of community foundations that I run into start with a group of people who say we need a centralized place to put resources, to endow, to protect forever, so we can sustain whatever it is needs to be sustained. Maybe it's sustained. Maybe it's just the community. There's a lot of stories, you know, like in the 1920s of, you know, 100 guys getting together and putting in like $10,000, or, you know, pledges of $10,000 over 10 years, whatever it was. There's a lot of that. We don't have that. We didn't have this core group to be able to tell the story. I